All right, y'all, let's get back to it. Girls Gone Bible. They've been in the news recently. I could talk sometimes. They've been in the news recently. I mean, they're always in the news. Like all their clips from their podcast, they're always going viral. They're always, going crazy on TikTok, on Instagram. There was this one clip that I came across on Instagram, very controversial clip. And it was talking about, I think it was a viewer question. It was a viewer question asking if you should live together before you get married. And this is a very simple answer. It's one that we struggle with though, because, we are sinful creatures and we are driven by our lustful desires, right? And even myself. And I'll share a little bit more about what I mean in a second, but they kind of got a little bit of controversy, nothing too crazy, just a little bit of controversy for their response. And I want to break this all the way down. And also I want to keep this in mind as well, because this podcast, this is from a podcast called Relationships and More. They posted this 10 months ago. Like, obviously you understand that people grow in the span of 10 months. Like their spiritual maturity grows, their convictions kind of start to shift and change. And their relationship with God in general just grows over the span of 10 months. So just keep that in mind. All right. It's not like they just said this yesterday, but also at the same time, I don't watch Girls Gone Bible, and it's not like disrespect. It's just like, I just don't watch it. It's just not something that was drawn to consuming, and it's not disrespect. So I say that to say, I don't know their full beliefs. I don't know kind of their viewpoints on certain topics. All right. So I'm still kind of understanding that. But regardless, let's just get into this. I'll stop talking. I'll let them talk, and I'll kind of give you my opinion throughout. All right. And I'm also very curious to know what y'all think about this also. So get in my comments. Also, join the community on Patreon. We have exclusive podcasts on Patreon every single week. I did miss last week. I apologize. I got a little bit busy. My kids are on spring break. But there's exclusive Patreon episodes on Patreon right now. Go check it out. All right. Link is in the description. Let's get into it.
This is something we talked about. Should you wait to be married until you live together?
Well, I was just talking about this with you the other day. Are you texting?
No, I'm looking something up. Go ahead.
Jesus. I do feel that you really know someone when you live together. I don't think you should rush and live together.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should date and really enjoy each other. And
yeah, I get that, and I understand what you say about.
Can I
Please
say one more thing?
Yeah.
But where I am now in my life is I'm not living with anyone until I know they're going to be my husband. Because
I'm glad she made that distinction, because the first part sounded a little worldly, sounded a little crazy, but that is true though. And I think that's why so many people live with each other. And I fell into this mindset as well. She is correct. When you live with somebody, you learn things about them that you would have never known had you not lived with that person. I mean, that's obvious. That's natural. And honestly, the amount of trust, and it's crazy because I was just talking about this same topic to my wife just yesterday. The amount of trust that you have to live with somebody, I don't care how well you say that you know somebody, the fact of the matter is, you basically just met that person. The amount of trust that you have to live with somebody who you essentially just kind of met is crazy. So at that point, if you have that much trust for that person and that much level of care and potential love for that person, well, I would hope you love that person if you're thinking about moving in with that person. Why don't you just establish the parameters before you get married? And what I mean by that, before you move in together. What I mean by that, why don't you just get married first? Because you already have so much trust for that person to move in with that person. Think about it like this. You don't know if that person gonna strangle you in your sleep. You don't know if they're gonna mash a pillow on your face and suffocate you in your sleep, you don't know what that person's into. You don't know if they're a psychopath, they're a serial killer. You don't know what that person's into. And the honeymoon phase is a real thing. In my personal opinion, I don't have any science to back this up, but in my personal opinion, I think the honeymoon phase, I think that phase where you're presenting the best version of yourself. And a lot of people do this. You present the best version of yourself, the version that you think is going to be most attractive to the person that you're in a relationship with or that you're trying to get into a relationship with. You're presenting the best version of yourself, but that might not truly be who you are. That's just the version that you're putting on the table at the moment. But the true self, the true struggles, the true battles that you go through, it's going to take sometimes 1 to 2 years for that to fully come to the table, for you to fully understand who you're actually dealing with. So the fact that you have so much trust to move in with that person and just figure that out on the fly, why not just get married beforehand and just do things the right way? Because ultimately, from a legal standpoint, just for 1 second, and I feel weird saying this, but just put God aside just for 1 second, and just from a legal standpoint, you would be more protected if you just got married, depending on who you ask. I think I'm just thinking from a woman's perspective because these are two women having this conversation, but you would be more protected if you got married because you're depending on that person financially. You're depending on that person. Okay, what happens if they just say one day, I don't want to pay for the rent, or I don't want to pay for the bills? Or what happens if they can't pay for the bills or pay for the rent? Now you got, collections on your credit report. Now you got a charge off. Now you got evictions. Emotionally, the amount of emotional trust that you have to have in somebody to move in with them, you don't know what that person's going to be doing. You don't know who they're going to be bringing over to the house when you're at work or when you're out with your friends. You don't know how they're going to be getting down. There's so many different elements of trust that go into moving in with somebody that we just don't think about, because society has taught us that is the natural progression of a relationship. You're dating, you become boyfriend and girlfriend, yada, 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 talking, whatever. And okay, then you want to take the next step. You're serious. Okay, let's move in, together. Let's get a place together. Let's move in together. That's the natural progression that society has set, but that's an unbiblical and ungodly progression, because that progression is going to put you in an environment that is going to encourage sin, and it's going to encourage temptation. Because even though there may be couples who can live together and not be intimate, you're putting yourself in an environment of sin on a daily basis. You're making it harder for yourself. You might as well just get married. And this is what Paul was saying in Corinthians. Paul was saying something to the effect of, it would be better if y'all just weren't having sex, but since we all have temptations and we all have desires, it's better if you just get married so that you can just fulfill that desire under the confines of a marriage and do it in a way that is pleasing to God. Because you're humans, you have these sexual desires, just get married. Stop tempting yourself. And when you're living with somebody on a daily basis, if you're sleeping in the same bed, if you're seeing this person in clothes that they wouldn't wear in public, you know what I'm saying? The level of temptation, the level of intimacy is only increasing. And that buildup is going to lead to something. And that something is not what you're supposed to be doing before you're married. So you're creating this whole environment of temptation. It just doesn't make any sense. And I say that to say, I'm no different. I adopted that mindset as well. I wasn't always a Christian. I just thought like, yo, we're dating. It's serious. Let's move in because the world says let's move in. I never even I thought I was doing something positive. I thought I was doing something positive by moving in with my girlfriend at the time. I thought I was doing something positive. I didn't know what I was doing was sinful because I was living according to the standards and according to the beliefs of the world and not according to the word of God. And so I thought, hey, I'm showing you that I can commit and I'm living with you. So obviously I'm not going to be stepping out. Obviously I'm not going to be, talking to other people. Obviously I'm only focused on you. I'm only focused on building with you. And I thought I was doing something positive. But the whole time I was further entrenching myself in an environment of sin. And that led to so many different fruits, not good fruits, but so many different fruits in my life. Let's continue the video. Okay, wait 1 second. I'm sorry. I had to pause it because I had to go to the bathroom. It's still recording? Okay, yeah, we're good. I had to go to the bathroom. I was thinking as I was in the bathroom, I think one of the reasons, at least for myself, is one of the reasons why people don't get married before they move in together. Like one of the reasons why they do it backwards is because they're trying to gather as much information as possible to determine if that individual is going to be their husband or going to be their wife. And this is why it's so important. Before you start dating, before you start talking to people, you need to establish a clear line of communication with God. Your prayer life, your relationship with God has to be on point because you have to be able to identify and recognize who God wants you to be with in the first place. You have to be able to recognize that. You have to be able to recognize that. Because if you're hearing a clear word from God, or if you're getting a clear sign from God that the person that you're talking to is your husband or is your wife, at that point, assuming everything checks out and assuming that you truly heard from God and you're not just hearing from your flesh or hearing from your lust, if you truly got that word from God and that person is your spouse, your husband or your wife, marry that person, commit to that person. Because it's a covenant that you're making between your husband or between your wife and between God. Covenants are not meant to be broken. A lot of people go into marriage thinking that divorce is an option. I understand that there's justifications from a biblical standpoint to get divorced, but that should not be your mindset when you go into to that relationship. Your mindset should not be that divorce is an option. Your mindset should be that this is a covenant that we are going to honor before God until death do us part. But so many people go into these relationships not having a clear line of communication with God, not having a solid prayer life. So they go into these relationships that they shouldn't be in the first place, and they end up living with somebody as a way to collect more information about that person to see if they would be worthy to move to the next step, which is marriage, when you're not even supposed to be in that relationship in the first place. But you would have known that had you had a clear line of communication and a solid prayer life before you even got with that person or before you even started dating in general. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's continue.
Going through that.
Well, because I agree with you completely that you don't know somebody until you live with them, and it's a massive like change in the relationship and the dynamic of a relationship. I will say, full transparency, I have lived with a boyfriend before. I have lived with somebody. I've played house. I've done it all. I would never do it again. I don't agree with it. I think that it's really detrimental to a relationship, but there is a statistic that shows, and it's completely like separate from the Bible. It's not biblical, but studies show that you have a much higher, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but you have a much higher chance of getting divorced when you cohabitate together before getting married. And I agree with that. Like, yeah. I get it, because you know why?
Yeah, that's true. It is true because, well, that was kind of rude. Let me let her finish her point.
Relationships are so hard, and they get harder as time goes on. And the whole idea that you won't always be in love as in love as you were in the beginning is real. Love changes and it grows and it evolves. And so when you move in with somebody, it completely changes the dynamic. It's really fun at first, and I'm sure it can always be fun, but it's like at some point you can really run into something difficult when you start to feel like roommates. And I just think that without the commitment of marriage, it's like you move in, you start to feel like roommates, you think you're not in love, let's just break up and we'll go find people we are in love with. And then you do the same thing over and over and over again, because without that commitment, why would you stay? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I was thinking like our relationship with God. Like, there are days where I don't feel like I know I love God, but there are sometimes I don't feel that fire of loving him. But because I'm committed to him, I'm going to stay on this path to him because I have that commitment. And I don't know, but even though I don't always feel that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, I for sure want to wait till marriage. I mean, then you see my sister. She's been with her husband now for 10 years. They moved right in together. They have the most incredible relationship.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's for me personally, it's preference.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. I wouldn't do it again, and I don't plan on it.
Yeah. And it's a lot too. When you're gonna move in with someone, that's a big deal. I mean, you better know that that's gonna be your guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's gonna be hard.
Yeah, he better be paying the rent though.
Being joyful in singleness. Okay, so this was the first time I really spent time.
So, what I was gonna say, because she had mentioned a very good point, something that I talked about as well, is that the divorce rate for people who live together before they get married are much higher. And I think it's like very simple. It's the fact that, like, you know, if, like, just like she said, if you don't attach a greater purpose to the relationship, it's easy for you to take the easy way out when things get hard. And things are going to get hard, especially if you're playing house. There's a certain aspect of that naturally can get a little bit of annoying, can get a little bit exhausting, that can test your patience, that can test your kindness. And if you don't have a greater commitment to understand in those moments that that's a temptation and that is something that you need to take to God and that is something that you need to address with God, then it's easy for you to just say, you know what, let me just leave this. And like she said, let me just find somebody else. Because you felt like, man, it's almost like you feel like you were married and you feel like, okay, what else am I going to get out of this relationship once we get married? Because you feel like you're already married. So you feel like there's nothing left for you to experience from a positive standpoint because you've already been in that situation and you're already living a lie. if that makes sense. I don't know, man. Like, am I listening? Am I not? I think some of y'all are too hard on them. Like some of the critique of this clip, y'all might be going a little bit too hard on them. Like I understand the first part that she said was crazy, but then she clarified it. But also we got to understand that like we're all going through our own process, our own journey. We didn't like most people did not grow up and just like right out of the womb give their life to Christ and have been living righteously ever since that point. Like most of us Christians have a past. And I think we have to be humble and vulnerable and loving enough to have these conversations with that in mind. So let me know what y'all think. Get in my comments, like this video. I'm out, y'all.